Welcome to Incredible Idaho. I'm Wayne Walker. This August we took a 5-day trip down Idaho's premier wilderness river, the Middle Fork of the Salmon. Now, as luck would have it, we chose the tail end of the floating season in the lowest water year in recent memory. And as you might have guessed, we bounced our boats off lots of rocks. But despite the conditions, we came away from the experience marveling at the wonderful treasure we have right here in our own backyard.
In 1964, after 9 years of squabbling, President Johnson signed into law a profound piece of legislation called the Wilderness Act. Eventually, 96 million acres of our nation's wild lands would be permanently protected in their natural state. The largest of these in the lower 48 is the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness, 2.4 million acres of rugged territory spilling across the mountains of central Idaho and encompassing the entire Middle Fork of the Salmon River. Our first look is from the perspective of an eagle, skimming 10,000 feet above the wilderness area, eerily shrouded in smoke from neighboring wildfires. Down below there somewhere is a tiny dirt landing strip squeezed between the mountain walls. Our pilot banks into a hairpin turn, slowly bleeding off altitude as he maneuvers the plane into the narrow canyon. Why do they call it a wing and a prayer? Finally, the dirt strip looms straight ahead and we landed with a gentle bump. It's already an adventure. We've come into Thomas Creek, the jump-off point for floaters when the river is really low. Like many of the landmarks along the Middle Fork, Thomas Creek is named for a miner who homesteaded here in the late 1880s. But it was a fellow named James Voller who actually registered a legitimate claim in 1911. He built this small log cabin, grew alfalfa, and kept livestock. A few years later, in poor health, he sold his claim to cattlemen. Ranching proved unprofitable in the Middle Fork's remote, tough climate, and the property changed hands several times until eventually it was built up into a hunting and fishing lodge. Finally, in 1966, Bill Harrah of Harrah's in Reno and Lake Tahoe bought the place, and for a time, the Middle Fork Lodge became a guest ranch, catering to entertainers and celebrities. Here in this remote outpost, guests could relax in the lodge, swim in a pool warmed by natural hot springs, or hike the surrounding mountains. But the best part was the salmon fishing. Each summer, big Chinook salmon traveled up the Middle Fork on the last leg of their 900-mile journey from the ocean. It was an angler's paradise. But today, that paradise is gone. Hydropower dams have destroyed the historic runs. Now, pristine salmon spawning habitat lies empty, and research biologists count the returning fish one by one, rather than by the thousands.
1-0. So far this year, we've passed 6 adults over the weir at Marsh Creek. Last year, we had passed, I think, 15 or 16 at the same time.
Marsh Creek is a tributary of the Middle Fork, and on this bright summer day, biologists are counting the tiny salmon that have emerged from last summer's spawning. In this manner, researchers get an estimate of the survival rate from eggs to juvenile fish like this, called par. Next spring, these little guys will head to the ocean, but only 1 out of 5 will survive the dams and the slack water reservoirs they create. A legacy lost. No longer can we experience the thrill of fishing for big salmon on the Middle Fork, but we do hope to catch another Idaho native, the cutthroat trout. It is a catch and release only river, and the men we're floating with are here to ensure that no one forgets that regulation. We're along on an enforcement patrol, and our boatmen are conservation officers with the Idaho Department of Fish and Game.
Yeah, with as many floaters as people are using this corridor, 10,000 a year, the cutthroat fishery being catch and release, we have to enforce that regulation, and if we allowed a keep season down here, there wouldn't be any cutthroat to fish for. And I think most of the people coming down here just enjoy being able to catch a few fish and release them and have a good time.
We're with Idaho Fish and Game. Are you familiar with the rules and regulations concerning the Middle Fork?
Well, we're barbless hook,
right,
catch and release.
Okay.
This angler is from the state of Maine. He's purchased a 3-day non-resident license and is thoroughly enjoying his first experience fishing in the West.
Well, the main attraction, I think, is that it's in a wilderness area. The only way to really get in here is by floating down the river, fishing that way, or coming in on horseback. A few airstrips in the area that people come in on. Pristine water quality, that's what cutthroat require, and it's just a beautiful area.
Clay Cummins has been a conservation officer with Idaho Fish and Game for 10 years. His job is to protect the resource from the folks who are inclined to take more than their share.
A few people, the majority of people, just like most places around the state, abide by the rules and regulations, but there's always those few that got to push it, and it's our job to keep them honest and take action when necessary.
Recently, the Bonneville Power Administration has funded a special tri-state team of enforcement officers who are charged with the responsibility to protect what few salmon remain from any kind of unlawful harvest. Idaho Fish and Game Officer John Hagan is part of that team.
How's it going? Guys catch any fish today?
That's pretty spotty.
Yeah. I'm with Idaho Fish and Game. Just doing routine angler checks. Individually, it's hard to say if an enforcement officer is making an impact. There's no tangible way of recording or documenting anything unless, you know, you write a ticket or you seize an animal and you can say, yeah, I did something. But there's more to enforcement than just writing tickets. Our presence on the water, we don't know what the effect that is on an deterrent, as far as a deterrent goes. As far as personally, I think I'm doing something. I sure enjoy it.
Place to get a warm meal in a dry bed, especially in bad weather. Have a roof over your head, it's pretty nice.
Congress defined wilderness as an area where the earth and its community of life are untrammeled by man, where man himself is a visitor who does not remain. But when the River of No Return Wilderness was established in 1980, this country wasn't exactly undeveloped. Placer mining and ranching attempts had fostered independent pockets of homesteaders up and down the river's drainages. And a few, like the Middle Fork Lodge, were grandfathered in as private property.
But many were abandoned when the gold played out or the hardscrabble ranching became too much. Several others, like this old homestead at Cougar Creek, were purchased by the Idaho Department of Fish and Game to be used as backcountry patrol cabins for their officers.
You know, a guy gets in here in November on horseback patrol, you've got a nice, safe, secure place to lock your stuff up and in out of the weather, and you know, it beats any tent I ever stayed in.
For almost 9 years, the Middle Fork was Butch Welch's patrol area. He made several expeditions in with a pack string and probably 25 to 30 trips by river raft. His stories of those years are as colorful as the language he uses to tell them.
You know, when a guy takes a backcountry patrol area, it's, I don't know, maybe, it's kind of tough to explain, but it's kind of the way it used to be, you know, the old time. For those 3 weeks a year that I'd be in here on that one big long patrol, it's kind of the way it used to be, you know, no radios, no telephones, with some exceptions. We could get out on the backcountry radio, but you were pretty much existing on your own, you know, and setting your own clock, your own schedule, and you know, and I rebuilt this cabin, or was instrumental in getting a lot of the work done, and it just turned into a special place.
The original homesteader, John Helmke, is buried down the hill overlooking the river. Alongside him are 2 more graves, the names barely legible, the people long forgotten. We continue on our journey, bumping and scraping over rocks and occasionally jumping out to tug ourselves along.
At low water, this can be a very common sight.
But a more disturbing sight greets us as we round the bend. Up ahead, a canoe has broached on a rock, and a paddler, who at the time of the spill was not wearing his life jacket, is having trouble riding the canoe in the swiftly moving water.
You guys need a line?
River safety is not something to be taken lightly. This group has no safety ropes or rescue equipment along, and that could cost you your life.
These guys are, you know, real poorly prepared. They've never ran this river. They, you know, really don't know where they are except for looking at the river guide. And I just hope those guys get home.
We're approaching a more technical part of the river, and it's a good time for Butch to review some safety tips with us.
Just going to demonstrate a throw bag and say we've got someone either on a rock out here or a person that's out of a boat, and you hold this end, you throw the bag to that swimmer or the guy on the rock. Guy grabs that rope, and you just get to a rock, and you're going to stop who's ever on that or whatever's on that to get your stuff back.
No matter what the water level, there are certain parts of the river you want to scout before taking a boat through. And one such spot is a nasty little drop called Tappan Falls.
Okay, Tappan Falls, and this is as low as I've ever seen it. And really the only run we have is the second tongue right there. Come in right next to that rock that's almost sticking out. You're gonna have to shoot right down there, and then you'll know in about 5 seconds if you made it or you didn't.
Butch takes the lead. He's loaded down with all the essentials of his gourmet kitchen. If someone is going to get into trouble, it'll be Butch in his heavy boat.
An old boy that was instrumental in teaching me a lot of this river. We'd run a rapid and I'd do a good job, and then I'd say, piece of cake. He'd say, well, we'll put that on your tombstone. The message being, the river's always boss, and you take the run that the river gives you a lot of times.
The river was definitely boss on this one. Butch hangs up on a rock, but our two lighter boats run it smoothly.
The real fun now is being on the river with the people, seeing the country, but you always have a healthy respect for the river. This is as low as I've ever run the river, and we spent a fair amount of time lifting these boats off of rocks when in places we've never had to before that was easy to run.
No one gets through the next set of rapids without getting stuck somewhere. We flag down the group behind us, and the rafts are sent through one by one.
Tell me when you're ready.
It's a long, slow process, and when it's over, we're all happy to pull into camp for the evening, because supper time on the river means Dutch oven cooking. And rumor has it, there's not a better chef to be found on the Middle Fork than our own captain, Butch Welch.
And just gonna add a little bit of a white wine as a cooking liquid, and a little bit of butter. We're gonna do a chicken recipe with pesto pasta and dried tomatoes for a main dish, a coleslaw salad, and some sourdough bread.
The Dutch oven here is just about the most versatile piece of cooking equipment that you can find. It can be used for frying, baking bread, making casseroles, or roasting meat. It's become the standard for river runners because just about any meal can be cooked with only 1 or 2 pots. And you know what that can mean? A lot lighter load for your boat.
We're gonna do a chicken recipe with pesto pasta and dried tomatoes for a main dish, a coleslaw salad, and some sourdough bread. So we'll just get started.
Butch says the key to cooking on the river is to do most of your preparation ahead of time. These chicken breasts were grilled at home and then frozen. This serves 2 purposes. If you're late getting into camp, it cuts down on your preparation time, and it's also a health precaution. Pre-cooked meat will fare better in a cooler over the long run.
We're gonna put that on the charcoal and let that simmer while we cook our pasta.
The charcoal has been heating in a fire pan. This is required equipment for river users. It keeps the fire contained, preventing wildfires, and since folks are required to carry out their ashes, you'll find the river corridor clean of fire rings and blackened rocks. All that remains of previous campers is their footprints.
Because we have a liquid in there, we can deck these Dutches, and they're going to cook just a little faster.
Butch cuts up sun-dried tomatoes and adds them to the pot with the pasta and begins bringing the whole works to a boil.
Okay, to go along with our dinner tonight, we've got a loaf of sourdough bread, and it's just regular old bread you buy in a grocery store, but it makes it kind of fancy. Fits just right there in a 12-inch Dutch oven. And to heat it up, we just put some briquettes on the top, and when dinner's served, we'll have hot sourdough bread to go with it with garlic butter. And one of the real problems with Dutch oven cooking, because you're dealing with such a variable heat source, and we've got a pretty stiff breeze here today, is getting everything done at once. And so you have to, it's just like turning the burner down. You might have to add briquettes or take briquettes off so that when dinner's ready, everything's ready at the same time.
We're getting close to that magic moment. Butch drains the pasta and then adds homemade pesto. This mixture is then spooned over the chicken breasts and put back on the charcoal. It's all coming together now. Coleslaw salad with a choice of dressing, hot crusty sourdough bread, and the main course.
Okay, we've had this sitting on the coals for about 10 minutes. And absorbed some of the juice from the wine and the chicken, so soup's on. Come and get it, Scott.
No one ever needs to be called twice for one of Butch's dinners, even acknowledging the well-documented fact that everything tastes better when you're outdoors. This was an exceptionally delicious meal.
All of those lambs were probably born in late May, early June.
You know, when you float any wilderness river, you slowly develop into a rhythm as the days go by. You move from being separate individuals into a team, from being observers of the river canyon into becoming part of the experience. It's a wonderful feeling.
You get back here and you're away from everything else. You have to depend on each other, you have to help each other, and my friendships, both personally and professionally, have been strengthened by river trips. I'm up on, I see two.
Our last couple days are lucky ones. We see a number of bighorn sheep, some groups with lambs frolicking about. A pair of otters romp and swim along the shoreline, enjoying this perfect summer day. Twice we float by black bears, but neither one sticks around for long. Finally, high up on the cliff, we spot a mountain goat, his snowy white coat contrasting with the muted browns of the canyon walls. We're not the first to appreciate and record these sights. Native Americans mark their camping spots along the canyon with drawings called pictographs, depicting their interaction and respect for the wildlife of the area.
Indians' first deer.
Butch calls these stops along the river little bits of history that are worth saving. Some are lonely spots, like the grave of Whitey Cox, a solitary man who returned to the Middle Fork after serving in World War II, intending to mine for gold. A bank caved in while he was digging a ditch, and he wasn't found for 2 weeks. By then, it was too late. Now his grave, littered with bleached bones and antlers, adds another bit of history to the story of the Middle Fork. One of our stops is the Mormon Ranch, another old homestead purchased by the Fish and Game in 1949. Conservation Officer Scott Reinecker has a bit of his own personal history here. He's been with the department for 5 years, following in the footsteps of his father, who began his career as a conservation officer with Fish and Game in 1961.
I started coming in here when I was about 10 years old. My dad would let me tag along with him, and we'd climb these hills and look for deer, and I killed my first deer back here. And we've been coming in, or at least I've been coming in for about 17 years now, and hopefully we'll be able to come back a long time and do it, because we have a lot of fun. Kind of one of those father-son bonding type thing.
Our journey ends where the waters of the Middle Fork spill into the main Salmon River. Butch spins the boat around for one last look at the canyon.
There's the Middle Fork of the Salmon. 96 miles back to Boundary Creek. I kind of always called Middle Fork my river, because it was the one I learned on. Since then I've done, you know, the Bruno, the Boise, parts of the Payette, the Grand Canyon, the Dolores, the Yampa, a lot of different rivers. And they're all neat, they're all special. But, you know, in my mind, it was this river that made me a boatman. And so I guess that's why I call it mine, although I suspect I'm not the only guy to do so.